A&B Properties is Quincy's largest apartment rental company with hundreds of units available. They offer short-term and long-term rentals with 1 up to 4 bedroom apartments. A&B Properties meets the needs of its tenants with care, compassion, and a quality of service that exceeds expectations. A&B Properties also has a convenient tenant app for you to do your payments or make repair requests. Give them a call today. A&B Properties, 217-919-8080, Quincy.
My guest today is Dr. Coffey from Quincy University. And what do you teach over there?
I teach American history. My specialty is recent American history with a focus on American politics from 1945 to the present. So this is actually what I specialize in.
What we're about to talk. So we're talking about the news.
Yes.
And the last time you were here, we were just talking about how the last time because this is round 2 for you. This is your second appearance on Frankie Say.
Yeah.
I'm really happy to have you here. Really. And also, you also accepted at last minute to where I actually was going to ask you for later in July, but then I wasn't expecting the Trump trial to end like I wasn't paying much attention to it.
Yeah.
How it went for 6 weeks?
Yeah, I mean there were delays and everything, and there was a possibility that the verdict might have been the next week. So it did. The verdict actually kind of came abruptly. Yes.
It came out of nowhere for me.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't expecting it.
Right.
I knew that it was going on.
Right.
And I knew it was somewhere between, okay, Trump being a businessman in the United States, in New York. I know the man has made a lot of moves in the past few decades. So from a truly 36,000, aerial view of this,
right,
with no biases, it's like, okay, has this guy committed misdemeanors in the past? Has he broken the law before? I don't know that many people who have never broken the law. I broke the law on the way over here. I went 36 miles an hour in a 35, so I'm breaking the law. But everything is kind of its perspective. It's a nuanced situation.
Right.
And so I've got some questions for you. Can we talk about the Trump trial a little bit?
Yes.
If it spills over into other things, that's fine.
Yes.
And how maybe it could affect the election.
Yep.
I'll ask questions like, is it going to get appealed? Could he go to jail? Can he still be on the ballot? Can he win the presidency if he's in jail? We'll do some speculative things. But can I ask you, my first question that I've got right here is essentially what crime was committed? Give you a new one.
The Donald Trump was convicted on 34 counts. The prosecution, the Manhattan District Attorney Office, brought charges that Trump had falsified business records in which he and his attorneys paid off Stormy Daniels to keep silent during the 1962 election. And what they're claiming is that Trump and his attorneys made a payment, and when they did so, they lied on the paperwork about what the payments were for.
So in New York,
yes,
they really cracked down on this kind of thing because the state of New York, there's so many high-level business transactions going on. There's so much billionaire behavior. There's lots of business behavior going on in New York.
Alvin Bragg said last week, Alvin Bragg is the Manhattan District Attorney. Alvin Bragg said that his main focus is now prosecuting white-collar crimes. This would come under white-collar crimes. Since Manhattan is the center of the business world in the United States, there's an awful lot of white-collar crime or transactions. Now, question you're getting at here is this typically prosecuted at the state level?
Is it?
Well, here we have two real things. First of all, has any charge like this ever been prosecuted? This was almost really kind of a novel case. And the second is, was this a prosecution in search of a crime. In other words, did Alvin Bragg go looking for something to say, here, this is how we can prosecute Donald Trump, as opposed to saying what you did. Let's say you were driving 150 miles an hour in a 30-mile-an-hour zone. That is an actual crime. They would pull you over, and if they pulled you over and they found stuff in your car, they would have committed a crime.
Yeah.
From Trump's point of view and from his supporters, Alvin Bragg said when he was running for Manhattan District Attorney, I'm going to prosecute Donald Trump, and therefore went and looked at this transaction with Stormy Daniels and said, let's indict him on this.
Okay, so I also heard, I did not hear it out of Alvin Bragg's mouth, but I heard from multiple sources, maybe a dozen sources.
Right.
Many of them biased, some not.
Right.
That allegedly he said, I want Donald Trump. Going after, he said that. Did he say that?
He said when he was running for district attorney, I will prosecute. He might not have said prosecute, but I will investigate Donald Trump. The same thing is true of the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, who said when she was running, I'm going to look in at Donald Trump.
Okay. The situation where Trump, I guess it was kind of, was it proven that he had a relationship with Stormy Daniels and then he paid her for sex and
see again
and hush money?
Here we get into a very nebulous thing, because Stormy Daniels testified under oath or wrote in an affidavit, I didn't have an affair with him. That was several years ago. That's where everything is very complicated, like I said, nebulous.
Is it legal for, and by the way, I'm asking questions. I'm not trying to go towards a pro-Trump or an anti-Trump thing yet.
Right.
Maybe I'll get there at the end, okay? And then do I have a bias? I think I do, but I want to ask questions because some of these things I don't know the answers to, and I'm searching for answers. Is it legal, and this is kind of rhetorical, is it legal for someone to have consensual sex? In the nature of what they did. Was what they did legal?
Yes.
Okay. Is it legal or illegal to pay hush money?
There you get into kind of the vagaries of the law. When, I'm not an attorney, but if you are paying someone hush money, Stormy Daniels is getting income. She would have to report it on her income taxes. His lawyers have to file something that we had made this transaction for $500,000 or something. From Bragg, it's not illegal to do that. What would have been illegal is if Stormy Daniels and her legal team had gone to Donald Trump and said, give us $5 million or I'm going to the press. That would have been extortion.
Right.
But paying her to say, quiet, that's not really a crime.
Okay.
So it wasn't the payment. What Bragg was claiming and what the jury convicted on was that Trump and his lawyer, Michael Cohen, falsified records as to why they were training Daniels, hence the conviction.
Okay, so falsifying business records
Yes.
in the state of New York is a misdemeanor. If you can prove it, it's a misdemeanor.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So why are we talking about felony?
Because you get into when you the 34 counts, there are some felonious aspects of when you put them all together. That's how they got felonies. Again, getting back to what you did, speeding is an offense. It's not even a misdemeanor. It's an offense. But what they're claiming is when you take all of Trump's transactions, some of them were felonies. Again, this particular thing has never been prosecuted before. So we're in an aspect of the law where there's no real precedent here.
So this idea did Alvin Bragg change the misdemeanor offense to a felony in the case of the falsifying of business records?
Now, as an attorney, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I have to say I don't know if that is the case.
Okay. What do you know where or when the crime was committed?
See, that's another thing that's in dispute. See, Donald Trump announced he was running for president in 2015. The payment was in 2016, but then Bragg brought in something about Cohn and Trump in 2017 in the Oval Office making records about this. That from if you're looking at from Trump's perspective, from Trump's legal team, that Bragg was arguing part of the crime was to keep Daniels silent during the 2016 election, but if a payment of some form was made in 2017, how does that fit your theory of the crime?
Well, the second part of that was whether or not Bragg was going over into an election interference situation.
Which would not be a state crime whatsoever.
It's not, right.
Not whatsoever. But when they're arguing to the jury, why was this payment made? What's the motive? They were saying in order to effectively ensure that Donald Trump will win the election. So motive is not the crime. What they're saying is he was paying her to stay silent in order to help win the election.
Is there a victim in the case?
You know, again, and I'm not taking sides here. Alvin Bragg has been very clear, and he ran on this platform, that I am going to stop prosecuting victimless crimes in Manhattan. Therefore, Bragg is one of these DAs who say we need criminal justice reform. So if someone steals a handbag worth $500 in Manhattan, they don't really get prosecuted because it's a victimless crime. And so there's some irony here in Alvin Bragg prosecuting Donald Trump when there's no victim.
So some questions that I had, and these are rhetorical.
But I would, let me just say, again, as a historian, I teach us the other side of this. There was really no victim in Watergate. Where's the victim? I mean, people broke into an office. There's really no victim there, but it still was a crime, which eventually led to Nixon's resignation.
Yeah, and then that idea of the Watergate situation, was it Bob Woodward was one of the kind of the guy who broke the story?
Yeah.
I mean, he was, from my research on that, Bob Woodward was essentially a Fed, essentially that was even working inside legal systems and kind of got poached, and all of a sudden one day kind of turned journalist and got hand-fed something maybe from the inside of people who didn't like what Nixon was doing, and then again went and found this information. And that sounds a little iffy too.
I would,
are there some parallels here, or no?
There is a magazine called Compact. There was an article last year on Nixon and Watergate that effectively makes that exact case. That what happened to Nixon was he was done on in from the inside. Now, you're getting an argument here about whether or not there is a deep state, whether or not there are people aligned to go after Trump, just like there are people aligned to go after Nixon
or JFK.
All of this.
All of it.
Now, the argument that Trump's people are making right now is that Bragg coordinated this with the Biden Justice Department. That the people who worked in Biden's Department of Justice, particularly one attorney, was then hired by Alvin Bragg to help prosecute this case. And Trump's legal team and Trump supporters are saying, you want election interference? That's election interference. Or, this trial was rigged. If one of Biden's lawyers in the Department of Justice is helping prosecute Donald Trump, that means this is not a fair trial. They're out to get him. What it really does come down to is Donald Trump is facing 3 legal trials. The federal trial with Jack Smith about the documents at his home in Mar-a-Lago. Mm-hmm. The election interference in Atlanta, which is brought by Fani Willis, and now by Alvin Bragg. What we are looking at is in the United States is the politicization of politics. The criminalization of politics. Is it possible right now that in Missouri, some Missouri DA might say, you know what? I think Barack Obama committed crimes, or I think Kamala Harris committed crimes. I'll bring indictments by a grand jury against them. What happens if Trump wins and his Justice Department starts bringing indictments against Biden and Biden's team? Are we going down a road where you can prosecute your political enemies? And that's what you were getting at when you were asking Donald, when Alvin Bragg said, I'm going to get Trump. That's not the way it's supposed to be in the United States.
Is Alvin Bragg funded by Soros?
Okay, this is another very contentious issue. George Soros has said, I've never met him. But George Soros has been behind very clearly. George Soros is one of these people who has stated that the American criminal justice system is fundamentally unfair. It's racist, first of all, and that there are hundreds of thousands of people behind bars who shouldn't be, and that that cash bail is unfair because people who are arrested can't pay it, so they languish in jail before trial. That sentencing is different between your economic and racial. There are economic and racial disparities in sentencing. So what Soros has done is he has given money to foundations pushing for criminal justice. He's also given money to PACs, political action committees, that then gave it to Soros, that then donated to Alvin Bragg. Now, did George Soros give $10 million to Alvin Bragg? No. Did George Soros make, I believe, $1 million donation that went to Bragg's campaign? Yes, I think it did. And a lot of these DAs have gotten money. It's too much to say that Soros put him in there or that Bragg is Soros's puppet. But if you look at the DAs like Gascon in Los Angeles, or Bragg, or if you look at the Safety Act in Illinois, that is all born out of the idea that the criminal justice system is unfair, and it's very clear the driving force behind that has been George Soros and his Open Society Foundation. There's no doubt of that.
Do you think some of this stuff is, this turn away from like cash bail with the Safety Act in Illinois and all of this this lawfare? So either for Donald Trump, in Donald Trump's case, either the law is fair or it's lawfare. There's something weaponized happening all across the country.
Yes.
In different aspects.
Yes.
It's kind of it was a conspiracy theory a long time ago that these kinds of things would start to happen, and now it's happening. Yes. And it goes back to this idea, and I think that you and I talked about this briefly, where if we never used to believe in conspiracy theories, because this isn't a conspiracy theory, what we're talking about. We are talking about the dismantling kind of the American justice system, or the weaponization of politics,
Yes.
and towards a former American president.
Yes.
And my take on this is, if you were a Trump supporter before that verdict came out, 34 counts, all felonies. We're looking for, I don't know what the 34 counts are. Right. I can't find them. And anytime that I see these, whenever I'm reading about these things, it's not a very transparent, it's all about, well, it kind of depends. This is muddied. The misdemeanors were kind of creatively tussled with, and some of these felony counts were created. There's no precedence for it. It's not even legal. So people who liked Trump before this, now they've got their heels dug in even more. People who never liked Trump, I think some of them are thinking, oh crap, I live in New York. I'm a businessman. I don't like the precedents the New York justice system is. I don't like what I see. And the people in the middle, Doctor, a lot of independents are swinging towards Trump on this, not because they like Trump, but because Trump said they're going to come after me to get to you. And they see the lawfare, they see the weaponization of the politics coming from somewhere. if it's coming from Soros or if it's coming from the Biden administration, they don't know where it's coming from, but they can see it. And they think there's something wrong.
You have your phone on you.
Yeah.
Can I talk for a moment here?
Yeah.
There is a CNN, if you could look something up.
Sure,
right now.
yeah.
There is a CNN legal analyst. I think it's Elliehoing. I believe that's his name. Now,
Spell it again. ELL.
Elliehoing, maybe.
ING.
He is a liberal. He is a CNN legal analyst. He is not a Trump fan.
Okay.
He wrote an article last week on CNN.com stating, I don't like what Alvin Bragg did. I believe that this is using the legal system to prosecute your political enemies. And what you were saying that,
Is he a lawyer?
yes.
Is it Ely Honig?
Yes, that's it.
A former New Jersey and federal prosecutor with
There you go.
extensive experience leading and managing criminal trials and lawyers.
He wrote, if you look him in the news
Okay.
section, even he was saying, I am uncomfortable. I don't think that this was the right thing to do because Bragg went in search of a crime, and these were misdemeanors. These things are never prosecuted, and this could set a terrible precedent because what happens if Trump is elected and the Biden people are out of office and Republican district attorneys or the Trump administration starts bringing charges against Biden's people?
So, something here on New York Magazine.
Yes, there it is. Yes.
And obviously, I'm not going to go to Fox News for that. I'm going
Right.
to try to stay. I'm going to try to stay out of that area.
Right.
Just kind of go here where it says Trump was convicted, but they contorted the law.
That's exactly, yes. And again, he's a Democrat. However, this needs to be pointed out. In 2016, remember, what did Trump do with Hillary Clinton? What was the chant? Lock her up.
Lock her up, yeah.
Now, he didn't. But when Donald Trump was leading his supporters in a chant of lock her up,
Do you think that did something to the other side?
well,
I mean, he didn't do it.
he didn't do it.
He also didn't build the wall.
He also, in my opinion, these charges by Bragg, the charges by Jack Smith, the federal charges in Florida, none of them would have been brought had it not been for January 6th. I do think that set off Democrats so much that this man is a real threat and we do need to prosecute him. Now, he has not been prosecuted whatsoever about January 6th.
Not at
about
all.
inciting a riot or anything
Right.
like that.
Right.
So you can argue what they're doing is they're prosecuting him for January 6th by bringing these other sort of charges.
So it's interesting, though. It makes more sense to me that they would try to go after the January 6th thing or the Atlanta, Georgia thing. I think they would have. I mean, if I'm trying to prosecute Trump, and let's say that I think that Trump is a national security issue.
Yeah.
And let's say that I'm tempted to break the law, but I can justify it because I'm saving America. And I don't, and Trump is such a bad person that I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do whatever it takes.
Yes.
I think that is kind of what a lot of the prosecution is.
There's no mentality that this man does have to be stopped. And if it means using the legal system to do it. Now, sentencing is July 11th.
4 days before the RNC.
There you go. This judge could put Donald Trump in prison during the election. I mean, he could sentence Trump to a year in jail, in New York State prison, and so you have the Republican candidate for president actually in prison. That's a very strong possibility.
I'm trying to think of these guys who are doing these things, going after Trump because it's Trump.
Yes.
They have big cojones. They will. I don't think they'll stop at anything. There is a very there's there's this theory out there. There's some celebrity male figures out there that are very vocal, and the general consensus online is: you go into Rumble, you go into Reddit chat rooms, you go into Twitter, which is now called X, and there's lots of murmurs and a lot of unsettling things that are being said, such as, okay, I didn't like Trump before, but this is terrible. I'm a Trump guy now. Or you've got this one particular, you've got some public figures saying, here's what they do. We can say the deep state. I think the deep state has this weird right-wing Tea Party, like kind of like redneck, and I don't mean redneck as pejorative, like, I mean like country folk, deep state. But I mean, RFK refers to them as three-letter agencies. There's this idea there where there are unelected bureaucrats that are in power.
Yes.
They have incredible amounts of power. They're not elected to government,
Right.
but they're absolutely controlling government, even at the highest level in the executive branch, specifically. And they pull on members in the legislative branch. Now, we don't know if they get to talking to Supreme Court members or not. I don't know about that. I would like to think that the Supreme Court is more untouchable, but maybe that's not the truth. But there's this idea, Doctor, where when you're trying to stop somebody, there's three ways to really stop somebody for real. Okay, the first thing is to try to censor them. Okay, censorship. If that doesn't work, you got to find a way to prosecute them or put them in jail. Mm-hmm. And if that doesn't work, you kill them.
Yeah, look, I'm just going to lay my cards on the table and be honest.
All right.
Okay. I believe Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. In my opinion, he shot JFK.
Okay.
I don't believe there was a conspiracy. I don't believe JFK was assassinated because he was going to pull out of Vietnam. I don't believe it was vendetta by the mafia and the CIA over Cuba or any of that kind of thing.
Okay.
Now, from my perspective, Trump and his supporters believe that this country is ruled by a small elite, that these people control the government, they control the media, and they control almost every institution in America. Therefore, Trump is effectively going up against these elites. Trump has taken them on, and the reaction now is by the elites, okay, we're going to put you in prison.
Are there a lot of them? Is it 7 people, or is it 37 people?
What, again, from I'm telling you as an analyst, if you take, say, I'm going to come up with a Donald Trump, Senator Mike Lee of Utah, many of Trump supporter from, say, Mississippi.
Okay.
They believe that ABC News, CNN, NPR, PBS, the New York Times are all left-wing institutions. They believe that the government is populated by fellow leftists. They believe that in 2020, these were the people who claimed that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation, when we now know, no, in fact, the Hunter Biden laptop was true, but 50 U.S. intelligence people wrote a letter in Politico saying it was Russian disinformation. The media, the law, the people like the district attorneys, they're all working together to advance, again,
This is the theory.
a left-wing agenda in the United States. Donald Trump is trying to say, no, I want to keep America great or make America great again. And that's how we have the clash. These elites versus Donald Trump.
So, do you remember when these elites in lockstep through all those media agencies and corporations that you talked about, from ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, HuffPo, all the way across the board. And I shouldn't say HuffPo. I haven't read HuffPo in a long time.
Yeah, that's irrelevant. Yeah,
I mean,
NPR, the
NPR.
Washington Post.
Yeah, I used to read a lot of anything Ariana would write. I'm all over it, but I haven't seen or heard from her in a decade.
Yeah.
Okay, but those kinds of places, Salon, whatever, they all said that Donald Trump was guilty of treason and was a Russian asset. They all said it, all of them, in perfect lockstep. And he wasn't.
See, this again is why you had January 6th, okay? Because those people got Pulitzer Prizes for saying the Steele dossier was true. The Steele dossier was not true.
Right.
We know it wasn't. All Russia did in 2016 was put a few fake things on Facebook.
Sure.
And we got this idea that Trump was collaborating or possibly even a Putin agent, which it was a hoax. And you got the Mueller investigation.
3 years.
Yes.
3 years. Every day. Every night.
Every-
That's the only thing. If you turned on those media stations,
Yes.
that's the only thing they talked about for 3 years.
And significantly, there was a book called Shattered. It came out.
Yeah.
And it stated, and it wrote, that the day after the election, Hillary's people got together in a hotel room and said, how do we explain this? Well, let's say it was because of Russia. So they started perpetuating this idea that Russia interfered in the election. And remember something, Hillary Clinton has spent the last 8 years saying the election was stolen. Now, if Hillary Clinton can say the election was stolen, why is it bad for Donald Trump to question about some ballots in Arizona?
Right.
Again, there's a belief in double standards. My job as an analyst is not to take sides here. It's
Right.
to explain from Donald Trump and his supporters' perspective. There are a small group of elites who control American institutions. Principally, the two things are the government and the media, and they are out to get Donald Trump. That is their belief.
If you've got people in the FBI and the CIA and the universities, I mean, some of the university system in America, I think, in Ivy League areas and in some places, there's, I don't know, whenever we say, this is what they're doing, they. Who is them?
Well,
Who is they? Who is them? It's such a like a sneaky, weird behind the scenes. It's so hard to figure out who these people are. But I suspect, like when you've got like a James Comey type, and then when he gets fired, it's like Trump fired the them. He fired the they. You know what I mean? It's like if the Clintons and the Obamas and the Soros figures and everyone connected through the Canadian Prime Minister, the people who are running the WEF, the WHO, the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, all of these three-letter agencies, all of them, FBI, CIA, if for some reason they get compromised to a point where they really want a lot of power and they don't want to be kicked out of the elite class and they don't want to lose power, they don't want these RFK Juniors. They don't want these Trump people. They don't want anybody that's going to disrupt this. So it looks like they will do anything at any cost to stop them. I mean, look what Biden won't even give RFK Jr. Security protection. He won't even. He's polling 10% in the country. Biden should be giving him security access.
Of all people, Kennedy should
should
get.
His dad and his uncle got whacked by the feds. Well, not JFK. You're saying Harvey Oswald. But what I'm saying is,
my opinion,
yeah. But what I'm saying is, don't you think that a fellow Democrat, a Kennedy, somebody in the elites that is turncoat?
Yeah.
See, that's the thing, because RFK Jr. and I know I'm changing over to Bobby Jr. But Bobby Jr. RFK Jr. He is a presidential candidate that's going to take votes either way from Biden or Trump. I'm not sure what direction, and I'm curious to see what you think about RFK, because RFK is a turncoat.
Although, interestingly, now you're going to have to write in RFK's name. Did you see that?
No.
He is not the Libertarian. If you Google, right?
He's not the Libertarian candidate.
He's not the Libertarian
candidate. Chase Oliver
so,
is.
So you're going to have to do it. Now,
which, by the way, I always kind of talk about myself as a libertarian. I got to show you this meme. There's a meme out there that's got a picture of two wolves, and one is a real stoic, strong-looking fighting wolf. The other is this like Sesame Street haggard wolf. It says the strong wolf is libertarian ideals, and then like the haggard little baby wolf that's getting its butt kicked is libertarian candidates, where it's like the libertarian candidate.
They nominated a strange person for libertarians.
I mean, it can't. I don't want to say it can get worse, but this is why I cannot be a part of the Libertarian Party, because their candidates are awful, and guys like Trump went to the Libertarian Party convention
and they heckled
they booed him, but then they stopped. But then he won him over.
Yeah.
Eventually, he won him over.
That was a strange.
That was crazy, wasn't it?
Now, I'm going to put, again, my analyst hat back on here. There is a sense by, again, Trump supporters that every time we're told we believe a conspiracy theory, well, the conspiracy theory becomes true, because if you look in 2020, anyone who said lab leak was denounced as a racist. They were. If you said that I believe, like Rand Paul said COVID came from the Wuhan lab, they deliberately created it, and they might have even deliberately, not even just leaked it, but let it go. Mm-hmm. Well, there was a paper that came out and said, no, that's a conspiracy. There's no evidence for that. And the New York Times science reporter tweeted that if you believe that it was a lab leak theory, you're a racist, and anyone who brought that up was denounced. Now, it turns out we're almost sure now that it was. And the other thing is, with Fauci going before Congress and having to admit this week that the 6 feet guidelines were just created out of thin air, and that the masks probably weren't effective at all, that everything critics of Fauci were saying, a lot of people like Rand Paul were saying, they were the ones denounced as conspiracy theorists. Well, looks like they were true. Again, I keep coming back to this word elites. There is just a belief among, and what drives Donald Trump supporters, or that he is the one who is fighting these elites. He is the one who is fighting the New York Times. He is the one who is fighting these radicals like George Soros, and that he is standing up for America and traditional American values against these people who want to defund the police. Those kinds of things. That's where this but we are now in a situation where politics has become lawfare. Again, what happens if Biden loses and then next year there are all these indictments against Biden people with the same people who said no one is above the law, except that maybe Biden will be indicted next year.
Well, so it's such a weird thing. So if you've got a real strong value system, you've got integrity, and you say, I believe those kind of attacks are wrong and unethical and bad for America. If you believe that, and then they happen to you, when you get into power, do you have a right to enact the same fighting the fire with the fire and abandoning your own value system and integrity to go after the people who are trying to hurt you? If you're doing it, are you doing it in self-defense?
See,
I mean, Doctor, you don't want to bring a knife to a gunfight over and over and over again. And that's what Republicans generally do, in my opinion.
If you are a supporter of Joe Biden, don't you have a legitimate fear right now that if Donald Trump is elected in November, starting in January 2025, he will send out federal agents to arrest people?
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that? I mean,
It's a valid concern.
Is it? I mean,
It's a valid concern.
I mean, last night he gave an interview with Newsmax in which he seemed to suggest, "I'll get these people." It's always, when you're a kid, your parents say, "I don't care who started it." But I brought up Trump saying lock her up, then he didn't. Well, now the Democrats have brought charges against Trump in 3 separate areas. I mean, and then Donald Trump is saying, "Well, I'm gonna bring charges because these people have committed crimes." Abraham Lincoln told his advisors at the end of the Civil War, toward the end of the Civil War, "My hope is that the Confederate leaders will just run away to Cuba. So in other words, I don't have to prosecute them. I don't have to arrest them. We don't have to execute them." You just wish that there was a situation right now in this country where everyone could just say, "Stop. Enough. Let's not use the legal system to go after our opponents. Let's not question the very validity of elections," because again, from an end, my job is to be neutral here. Those who support Joe Biden, those who oppose Donald Trump, are saying this is the guy, for the first time in American history, who tried to cancel an election, tried to overturn an election. Now this same person is threatening, if he's elected in 2024, to go after his enemies. Trump could be a dictator. From Trump supporters, they're saying, wait a minute, you're saying Donald Trump's going to jail his opponents? You've jailed Donald Trump.
Yeah, the one who smelt it dealt it. So speaking of Lincoln, we know what happened to Abraham Lincoln.
There was a genuine conspiracy there.
Do you think that there are enough people in this country that if they feel like there's been election interference in 2020, we know how they went after Trump, and they were going after Trump in 2015. They went after Trump in 2016. They did everything in their power to stop that. Do you think that can this get out of control if Trump is jailed? If Trump, if it looks like there's been further election interference, how bad? And this is not. By the way, this is not a conspiracy. I'm not trying to for clicks to try to see how bad something can be. That's not what I'm asking.
No.
I'm like, if you know history,
Yes.
and you know how bad the 20th century was in some ways with the wars, we're still really darn comfortable in this. We're in air conditioning right now. We've got leather seats in our cars. We're not dying of influenza and diarrhea and TB. We live comfortable lives.
Yep.
But do you see a possibility, either small, medium to large possibility of some type of weird uprising? And I'm not, even if it's a non-peaceful revolution,
right,
sometime between now and the election or right after the election. Do you see anything on the horizon of some weird stuff that could be uncomfortable?
If Donald Trump is put in prison, if you're a supporter of Donald Trump, you're looking at it saying they're the ones who are actually rigging an election. They're putting our candidate behind. What some people might say, what recourse do we have other than to resort to some kind of violence? Our political system has lasted since 1776. It got through the Civil War. We even held elections during World War I, World War II. We didn't suspend them. But are we facing the potential of a rupture or a civil war? I wouldn't say immediately. What I would be more afraid of, Frankie, is lone individuals thinking perhaps maybe I'll blow up a polling station, that kind of thing. It would not be good for our democracy, and I say this as an analyst, it would not be good for our democracy if Judge Merkin put Donald Trump in prison during the election. that would benefit no one, because it would seem, therefore, that this election is not even an election, that it's completely unfair. That if you're imprisoning your opponents, where do they imprison their opponents? They imprison their opponents in third world countries, or what did the Soviet Union did?
I gotta tell you,
you arrested and imprisoned your opponents.
But the elite make so many mistakes. I mean, look what they did during COVID. The elite said, you can go in your mid-size SUV with your 5 children, with all the windows rolled up and the air on, down to the marina, down to your little boat. But only 2 of you may get out of the car and get into the open watercraft in the middle of the water. So the elites did that. The elites said things like, you need to take the jab. The elites just lie. This is the problem. The elites are saying, it's okay if we let 8 million illegals through the border. We don't care if they get the COVID jab. We don't care if they're carrying guns. We don't care where they go, but we want them to come through the border. But in the meantime, your candidate, because he filed hush money under the wrong accounting ledger, because we changed some writing in a book for $130K, he's going to go to jail. But by the way, the rest of you people are going to suffer for another 4 years. We're going to allow 10 million people through the border, and we're right and justified. The elite make so many mistakes, and they get by with so much, and nobody is doing anything about it.
We live in a country now where the political differences have become very personal, where people no longer can discuss it, where families are divided, where people live and move from certain areas because they don't agree with the politics. This election in 2024 is extraordinarily important because of things like the border, because of the Supreme Court, because of Russia, Ukraine, how the presidents will handle Israel, Palestine, but more than that, just kind of your worldview. Again, I don't take sides. I simply do not take sides on social issues, okay? I don't take sides on when I'm speaking publicly about abortion or the death penalty or anything like this. But let's just get into a controversial issue about a worldview. Should someone who was born a male, who is now 17 and a senior in high school, be allowed on the women's track team? We live in a country where Trump supporters say, absolutely not, that is unfair, that is a boy. Biden supporters say, we support the LGBT community, we support trans rights. If that 17-year-old declares that they are now a she, yes, because that is the fair thing to do. That's where our politics have become, where there is absolutely no middle ground. And that's why not just the stakes are so high, but the tensions are so high.
Yeah.
That's what you're getting at. Are we going to have a wall or not? Are we going to allow transgender people to compete in sports? You look at Illinois. Illinois effectively has abortion on demand. Missouri, across the river, abortion is effectively banned.
Mm-hmm.
So these social issues are so intense and we're so stratified. That is why people are so energized. That is why November, getting back to a question that you're asking, half of the country is going to be devastated in November when their candidate loses, but also a significant number of people are not going to accept the validity of the election. And that gets to what you're asking. Will that lead to some sort of violence or civil war?
Why would they accept the validity of the election? They don't have good reason to anymore. Do you think Kathy Hochul, the governor from New York, would pardon Trump?
No.
Or do you think Joe Biden would pardon Trump?
No.
Do you think what are the chances of him on the sentencing on July 11th, 4 days before the RNC? I'm sure that just happened to be the date. I'm sure they didn't look at what was going on at the time. Do you think, what percentage probability, and I'm not going to put you on the hook for it or anything, but just kind of like off the top of your head, just your feel, your intuition for the probability of Trump, of them actually trying to jail him?
I in my opinion...
Can I just interject one thing?
Yes.
Let's assume, I feel you saying they wouldn't do that because that's such a terrible thing for the country. But my point is this, Doctor. Yes, that would be bad for the country. There's so many bad things for the country that they will do. I think they're blinded by their emotions and their own ideologies. I think they're blinded by it, which, by the way, I'm blinded by some of mine too. But the point is, the elites, I don't know if the person doing the sentencing, if it just comes down to that one person. Because don't you think that guy's making some phone calls saying, what do you guys think I should do? Do you think the judge is anybody pressuring him? Or if he's thinking, I mean, if he's more of an independent, if he's a real judge, even though he gave really wacko instructions to the jury before they went in to go look for a verdict, I think the judge is severely compromised in lots of different ways. But if the judge thinks that this would be really, really bad for America, but we got to put this guy down. This guy cannot be around. What would be the point? Seriously, what would be the point of going through all of this rigmarole just for the Dems to say, and I'm not trying to be political, I'm just saying the Democrats are going to say, convicted felon, convicted felon. I mean, that's the poster.
Right.
That's the bumper sticker.
Yes.
Why would you go this far? Just get convicted felon? I mean, why wouldn't you just go all the way and put this guy in jail? Because they tried to censor him.
Right.
They're trying to put him in jail.
Right.
And you already know what I said, if they can't get the first two, what they do.
In my opinion, what they're going to do is, he's going to put Trump in jail for like 90 days. Not for a year, but just to embarrass him. And just send him away so he can't attend the Republican convention, and then put him in jail until middle October or something. And really to just force Donald Trump to be in a prison. I mean, where he is in an actual prison cell and he's a prisoner. And possibly take away Secret Service protection. That I think. Now, I don't know.
Ooh, can he take away Secret Service protection?
Well, see, there again, we get this issue where it's very ambivalent.
Because then he'll Epstein himself.
You
take away the Secret Service and all of a sudden...
You have to consider these things. This
Good
is a
grief.
state crime, but he has Secret Service protection, and it is a law that they get Secret Service protection for 10 years, but it really kind of is at the discretion of the Secretary of the Treasury, who controls the Secret Service, to withdraw them. You see? I mean, you see all these issues coming into play. Now, if Merkin does say, I'm going to jail you for 90 or put you in prison for 90 days, there will be an immediate appeal, but it would go to a state court in New York. All the state courts are controlled by Democratic judges, and they're never going to turn that. He needs to go to a federal court, but then that could take some time. So those are the issues that were involved here, but I get your point.
Whoever the elite was that has done this whole thing from the very beginning, from 2015 to like labeling Trump a treasonous, terrible, like Russian asset, to all of the things that he's done up until now, they've done a really good job.
But
I mean, I'm against what they're doing because I don't think that's good for America. I think they should let voters decide. Mm-hmm. But it's expert level. Like to get 34 counts from a jury in New York, the way that this has all gone down, it's expert level work. But also sloppy.
But I have to say the reply to that is, look at what these people did on January 6th. They stormed the Capitol. They physically tried to prevent the certification of the legitimate election. We are fighting against an opponent who, for the first time in American history, said an election was illegitimate. and I am going to potentially, violently, try to stop the Electoral College from being certified. That was a potential coup. That's the reply. One is worse than the other. Again, I play the role of analyst here. I have brought up the fact that Trump supporters believe there is an elite that are out to get him. The counter is that Donald Trump would actually be the dictator that they fear.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
If you were going to put together an insurrection into the Capitol building,
Mm-hmm.
you know the guy with the big buffalo head
Yes.
and the face paint?
Yes.
Do you know how that guy acted in there? Did you see the videos of the way he acted?
Yes.
He was like, "Hey man, what's up? How you doing? Hey, everybody, want you to make sure you take care of this room. It's a very sacred area. We love America." And then, I mean, there was some violence going on in there. I mean, somebody got shot. But I will ask you this. If you're going to be in charge of an election, do you send that guy in with, and then do you I mean, they had zip ties, right? What kind of guns were they holding?
I understand that.
Was it an insurrection? Like a true insurrection to overthrow the United States government?
I would think you have to start with, was there any evidence that there was actual fraud in Georgia, Arizona, Wisconsin, or Pennsylvania?
Wait, you're saying that
Was there?
the answer
Was there any evidence?
Well, you're saying that it is an insurrection or it's not based on events in other states?
No.
By the way, you can
Trump-
punt on this. You can punt on this. You can say, "I prefer not to have an opinion." You can say that. I will tell you this. If you're in charge of the insurrection, don't send in the happy-go-lucky, patriots that are not armed at all, and they're in there. This whole thing about, we got to do this because it's... By the way, if there was fraud in Atlanta and in Michigan and in Arizona and in Pennsylvania... If there was any, because really, this is boiling down to a few counties.
Yes.
It's boiling down to 150,000 votes, practically. I mean, the whole country hinges on this.
Yes.
And we're talking about election interference. When there is definite election interference going on in this country. Now, you can say it's this side or this side, one of the two sides, but it's definitely happening somewhere. And I wonder if you're really sure that you're losing your country and you know that your country's behaving badly, and the best you can come up with, not you, like the proverbial you and I, the best we can come up with is sending the buffalo head guy in there with the staff, with the painted face, and walking around, and was it an insurrection? Is this really what we're fighting about? Which, by the way, I don't think those January 6th people should have gone in there and done that. But, I'm kind of a guy, I'm pretty pacifist about this. I'm not an activist. Someday I may turn into an activist. Maybe a peaceful one where I'm going to go in, not into a government building, but I may go into a peaceful protest situation and be like, you guys, we're living in a banana republic we got problems. What are we going to do? Because you know what doesn't help? Voting. Voting doesn't seem to matter. And if the Electoral College has any kind of wherewithal at all in this next election, what are they going to... Where do those loyalties lie? Do they lie with, they're being told to vote one way? I mean, this is a whole other conversation. We don't need to get into the Electoral College debate, but I don't really have any faith. I think it's been proven that the elites are trying to get the illegals to sign up to vote. I think that's been essentially, as far as conspiracy theories, been relatively proven just by the fact that there's stuff hanging out in the House of Representatives saying that illegals should be able to vote. They should be able to, I mean, they're given bus cards, plane fare, debit cards, money. You know, they've been given all of these different things. The idea that there's not going to be election fraud this time around is insane because we're witnessing it. It's happening. There's going to be massive ballot harvesting again. The Republicans are not equipped to cheat good enough. They're going to have to, Donald Trump's going to have to get 100 million votes because Biden's going to get 93. Biden's going to get 93 million votes. He got 81 last time. He'll probably get more unless you got a lot of Biden supporters that are just thinking like, oh my gosh, this guy's demented and he's old and he doesn't know his way around the stage and it's over. But I don't think Trump can win this election. I think he probably should because I don't want another 8 to 10 million people coming across, and I want to stop the insanity, and I do want him to break down the three-letter agencies in the deep state. I do want him to do it, but I think the powers are so strong that even if he won the election, he's not going to win the election. Is it a possibility?
I think that the questions about ballot harvesting and mail-in ballots are something that divide Americans, and if you think it happens, then you believe it. In my opinion,
let me break it down in a different way. Do you think that America, here's the last question of the podcast. Last question.
yeah.
Do you think that the November election is going to be a free and fair election void of election interference?
Fundamentally, yes. And the reason I believe that is because I do think most of our ballots are secure. However, if Donald Trump is put in prison and can't campaign, you have then used the legal system to undermine the election process. So those two things can be true, in my opinion.
So it could
have election integrity, but if you put one political the candidate in prison, you have therefore raised valid questions about the election because he can't campaign, can't debate, and they will have used it. I think that the 2020 election, those questions were resolved. The 2024 election, I'll leave you with this.
Okay.
Very possible we could see 269 to 269. It will go to the House, and then Trump will win.
Doctor,
Yes.
thank you so much. Great analysis, as always. This is round 2 of Frankie Say. I do believe that someday we're going to do a round 3.
I hope so.
If you will grace us. with
No,
your
I
presence.
love doing
You love
this.
it?
Yes.
You're super good at it. You're so smart. I love talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. See you.
Yes.